For centuries, people have sought answers to questions about the nature of good and evil. These two concepts have become major components of moral philosophy and ethics, profoundly influencing the development of cultures, civilizations, and philosophy in general. But where did good and evil come from? And when did humans begin to recognize their existence? To understand these concepts, we will need to delve into ancient history, where the first ideas of good and evil originated. The history of good and evil originated in the Roman Empire. The fact is that there, for many centuries, there was a clear division into classes. The patricians, the supreme aristocratic elite, exploited the slaves and the peasants dependent on them, who made up the majority of the population. The slaves experienced constant physical and moral oppression in such unfair conditions. They harbored resentment, and to somehow close their eyes to their misfortune, they needed a belief in something higher that could give them hope for freedom. This need could be closed to them by Christianity, which was actively developing at that time. And now, very briefly about its history. Paganism was prevalent throughout the developed world at that time, until the Jewish people came to two very important ideas. The first was the idea of monotheism, which is the oneness of God, and the second was the idea of covenant, which is man's bargain with God. As they say in ancient Jewish beliefs, there was Abraham, a 99-year-old man, and one day God came down to him and said, "I'm the Almighty God, and I can give you a good life. You will have children, and all your descendants will become a privileged nation. But there is a condition: every male among your descendants must be circumcised." Thus came into existence a unified Judaism led by God named Yahweh, to whom the Jews had been devoted for over 5,700 years, according to the Jewish calendar. At the time of Jesus' birth, the Jewish land was absorbed into the Roman Empire. Jesus grew up and, calling himself the Son of Yahweh, became a preacher. He preached the idea of early socialism. He argued that the rich and patricians could not go to heaven, but that there was always a place for the poor and oppressed, which is why his sermons began to gain popularity among the narrow but devoted circles of slaves. Slaves began to unite in secret cults and gather in caves to jointly honor their new beliefs. Their main beliefs were a belief in good and evil. By absolute evil, they meant their oppressors, the patricians, and their behavior in general, and by absolute good, their leader, Jesus, along with his altruistic and socialistic beliefs. However, the active spread of Christianity drew the ire of the authorities of the Roman Empire. Christians faced persecution, which reached its climax with the crucifixion of Jesus. Nevertheless, the Christian faith spread steadily, attracting more and more followers. In an effort to hold on to power and avoid potential slave revolts, the Roman government decided to use Christianity as a tool to control the population. They realized that Christianizing the numerous pagan communities could help them control the people by bringing together in a common faith. Then there were many other things that happened to Christianity. For example, it split into Orthodoxy and Catholicism. But we are not interested in this now because it did not have much impact on the history of good and evil. The model of good and evil was preserved in Christian teachings for a very long time, until their idea was reborn anew in two new opposing ideologies of the 20th century: socialism and capitalism. Socialists advocated the same beliefs as Jesus once did. They hated the bourgeoisie and wanted equality for all classes, while capitalism favored the idea of to each his due, encouraging not everyone, but only the smart and enterprising. Although capitalism does not perfectly fit the definition of evil, it still has common features with it, because it strives not for equality, but for the elevation of the best representatives of humanity, which is somewhat reminiscent of the division of society into layers in the Roman Empire. However, in spite of this, most of the world is capitalistic now, and at the same time, people supporting capitalism can be both religious and believe in the idea of good and evil. That's how funny seemingly banal ideas can turn 360 degrees in people's heads.